This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We are diving into the latest developments in high-profile criminal cases and breaking news from across the country and beyond. Let's get started with today's top headlines.
New video shows Bryan Kohberger changing his license plates.
Rex Heuermann reportedly plans to plead guilty next month.
Barron Trump witnessed a violent London assault via FaceTime.
An Indiana man is sentenced for a toddler's death.
A California shooter receives life for a park standoff.
A Wendy's manager allegedly shot a customer over chicken.
Police arrest a suspect in a 1990 cold case.
An Indiana mother is charged with neglecting her son.
A Texas man allegedly killed his bride after wedding.
A North Carolina mother faces charges for baby's death.
First, the Kohberger footage. Newly released surveillance video from a Washington state DMV shows Bryan Kohberger appearing remarkably calm just 5 days after the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students. In the footage, Kohberger is seen registering his white Hyundai Elantra, the very vehicle spotted near the crime scene. He engages in casual small talk with the clerk, discussing his preference for car models and even mentioning his loyalty to the New York Yankees. It is chilling to watch him act so normal, joking about baseball and his move from the East Coast, while the community of Moscow was still reeling from the tragedy.
The details of the conversation are particularly haunting, given what we now know. Kohberger mentioned he was a PhD student and expressed uncertainty about staying in the Pullman area, depending on his future job prospects. He even commented on the safety of the region, acknowledging the clerk's remark that the murders in Moscow made things feel less secure. This video was captured on November 18, 2022. Long before his arrest in Pennsylvania. Now serving 4 consecutive life sentences, Kohberger's mundane interactions at the DMV serve as a stark contrast to the horrific crimes he committed just days prior to this recording.
Next, the Gilgo beach case. In a major turn of events, sources indicate that Rex Heuermann, the accused Gilgo beach serial killer, is expected to plead guilty to murder charges next month. This development comes after Heuermann previously maintained a plea of not guilty and even attempted to have his trial separated. The 62-year-old Manhattan architect was linked to the deaths of several women whose remains were discovered along a remote stretch of Long Island shoreline. The victims were mostly young women involved in the sex trade, and their disappearances haunted the region for decades. A guilty plea would finally bring a sense of closure to a case that began in the 1990s.
The scheduled court hearing for this change of plea is set for April 8th. Investigators used advanced DNA techniques to connect Heuermann to the crime scenes, which eventually led to his high-profile arrest. While his ex-wife has consistently maintained his innocence, his daughter has publicly expressed her belief in his guilt. The victims, including Maureen Brainard Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, and Megan Waterman, were found in close proximity to each other, suggesting a calculated pattern. If Heuermann does indeed plead guilty, it will bypass a lengthy and painful trial for the families who have waited years for justice to be served in these cold cases.
Now to London. A Russian man named Matvey Rumyantsev has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for a violent assault in London that was witnessed by Barron Trump. The incident occurred during a FaceTime call between the 19-year-old son of the U.S. president and a female friend. Rumyantsev, described as a trained fighter, reportedly became jealous of the woman's friendship with Trump, whom she had met through social media. During the trial, a transcript of the emergency call revealed that Barron Trump alerted UK police immediately after seeing the attack unfold on his screen. The judge noted Rumyantsev's lack of remorse and his history of temper and jealousy.
The victim's impact statement was heartbreaking, as she described withdrawing from the world and feeling humiliated after the hour-long ordeal. Rumyantsev had struck her repeatedly and even dragged her by her hair, leaving her fearing for her life. After the assault, he attempted to manipulate the victim into withdrawing her allegations while he was in custody. While he was cleared of some charges, including rape, the conviction for actual bodily harm, and perverting the course of justice, ensures he will serve time. This case highlights the unexpected ways digital connections can lead to real-world interventions, as Trump's quick thinking helped bring the authorities to the scene in London.
Moving to Indiana. In a tragic case from Indiana, 25-year-old Jesse Allen Sarton has been sentenced to 35 years in prison for the death of his girlfriend's toddler, Caroline Ruth Boggs. The injuries the 21-month-old suffered were so severe that doctors described her brain herniating and leaking through her ears. Sarton admitted to violently shaking the child for about 20 seconds because he claimed she was being aggressive. He initially tried to cover up the crime by telling medical staff that the child had fallen off an ottoman after being knocked over by a dog. However, the medical evidence of shaken baby syndrome was undeniable and completely contradicted his initial story.
The judge highlighted several aggravating factors during sentencing, including the extreme vulnerability of the child and the fact that Sarton was in a position of trust. Caroline was a healthy and joyful child who depended on the adults in her life for protection. Instead, she suffered unimaginable abuse while her mother was away at work. Sarton was also on probation for a prior offense at the time of the killing. Following his 35-year prison term, he will serve 5 years of probation and is strictly barred from having any contact with minor children. This sentence reflects the devastating loss of a young life and the violent nature of the assault.
Shifting to California, Eric Abril has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole following a terrifying shootout and hostage situation at a California park. The incident began when officers tried to serve a search warrant on Abril, who responded by firing approximately 20 rounds at them. During his attempt to flee, he encountered 72-year-old James McKeegan and his wife hiding in a field. Abril shot and killed McKeegan before taking his wife hostage and using her as a human shield. The victim recalled the smell of gunpowder and the ringing in her ears as she was forced into a nearby creek. It was a scene described as a Wild West standoff.
During the standoff, Abril used the woman's phone to communicate demands to the police, even boasting that he had killed her husband. He eventually shot the hostage in the back, causing serious injuries, before he was finally taken into custody by officers using armored vehicles. Abril pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, attempted murder of a peace officer, and kidnapping. The Placer County District Attorney's Office emphasized the sheer violence of the event, noting that Abril was wearing a bullet-resistant vest and actively targeted law enforcement. This life sentence ensures that he will never have the opportunity to harm the community again after such a senseless and brutal display of violence.
Next, a Wendy's dispute. A Wendy's manager in Kansas City, Missouri, is facing serious charges after allegedly shooting a customer following a dispute over a chicken order. Terrence Phillips was arrested and charged with felony assault and armed criminal action. The conflict reportedly began at the drive-thru intercom, when Phillips asked the customer to pull forward so the chicken could be freshly cooked. The customer claimed Phillips was rude, and the tension escalated when the food was finally handed over. After driving away and spilling his drinks, the customer returned to complain. Phillips allegedly exited the restaurant and fired a handgun at the customer's car, striking him. Phillips has pleaded not guilty to the charges.
Phillips told police that the customer had used racial slurs, and that he only went outside because he noticed the hatch of his own car was open. However, surveillance footage allegedly shows Phillips re-entering the restaurant with a handgun in his pocket after the shooting occurred. The victim was able to drive himself to a nearby residence to call for help, and was treated at a hospital. Phillips is currently being held on a $1 million bond. This incident serves as a shocking example of how a minor disagreement over fast food can spiral into life-threatening violence. The legal proceedings will determine the validity of the conflicting accounts provided by both parties.
Now, a cold case. In Houston, a breakthrough in a 34-year-old cold case has led to the arrest of 64-year-old Floyd William Parrott. He is charged with the 1990 murders of Cheryl Henry and Andy Atkinson, a young couple found dead in their car in what became known as the Lover's Lane murders. For decades, the families lived without answers, but recent investigative efforts and a timely tip finally linked Parrott to the crime. Investigators believe Parrott may have other victims and are asking the public for information. Interestingly, the district attorney revealed that Parrott had a history of impersonating a law enforcement officer, which may have been how he approached his victims in the past.
Cheryl Henry's sister expressed a profound sense of relief at the news of the arrest, stating that while it doesn't bring her sister back, it ensures the person responsible can no longer hurt anyone else. Parrott was taken into custody in Nebraska and is currently awaiting extradition to Texas to face capital murder charges. Over the years, more than 100 persons of interest were investigated, but the case remained stagnant until now. The Harris County District Attorney emphasized that these unsolved murders have weighed heavily on the community for over 3 decades, This arrest marks a significant step toward justice for the families of the two young victims who lost their lives.
Back to Indiana. A horrifying case of child neglect has emerged from Indianapolis, where a 4-year-old boy with cerebral palsy was found dead in a basement closet. Angel Lovely and her boyfriend Nicholas Bergdahl are facing felony charges of neglect of a dependent, resulting in death. The boy, Malichi, was unable to walk or talk and required significant medical care. His siblings told investigators that their mother frequently kept him trapped in the cluttered closet and ignored him. When first responders arrived, they found the boy unresponsive, with blood on his face and clothing. The mother admitted to putting him in the closet when he wouldn't stop screaming, claiming she needed a few minutes to breathe.
The details provided by the children are devastating, with one sibling reporting hearing gagging noises from the closet on the morning of Malichi's death. Bergdahl claimed he didn't want to tell the mother how to raise her children, and insisted he was asleep when the boy was in distress. The basement was described as being filled with holiday decorations, and the closet was where the boy often slept. This case highlights a catastrophic failure of care for a highly vulnerable child. As the coroner works to determine the exact cause of death, the community is left mourning a young life that was spent in such tragic conditions. Both adults remain in custody as the investigation continues.
Next, a Texas tragedy. In Carrollton, Texas, 23-year-old Francisco Mendez Marin has been arrested for the murder of his new bride Carla Rangel less than a month after their wedding. Police were called to their apartment after neighbors reported hearing screams for help and the sound of wood breaking. When officers arrived, they found Rangel in a pool of blood with a fatal injury to her throat. Mendez Marin was located nearby, covered in blood, and carrying a bloody pocket knife and a razor blade. Chillingly, he allegedly told officers in Spanish that he was obligated to do it and insisted he hadn't done anything bad. The couple had only been married since late February.
The investigation suggests that a domestic dispute turned deadly, resulting in the 20-year-old woman's death. Mendez Marin is currently being held without bond in the Dallas County Jail. Body camera footage captured his initial statements at the scene, which will likely be central to the prosecution's case. The medical examiner has officially ruled the death a homicide. This case is a somber reminder of how quickly domestic situations can escalate into extreme violence. The family of the young bride is now left to grapple with a senseless loss, just weeks after what should have been a celebratory time in her life. Legal proceedings are expected to move forward in the coming months.
Finally, North Carolina. A mother in rural North Carolina, Sierra Frederick, is facing first-degree murder charges after allegedly stabbing her 10-month-old son Enoch Chappell to death. The incident occurred in a mountainous area north of Asheville, where deputies also reported that Frederick chased a man down a driveway with a fixed-blade knife. Emergency personnel arrived at the scene and attempted to save the infant, but he was pronounced dead at a local hospital. The Buncombe County Sheriff expressed the community's heartbreak over the tragedy, praising the first responders who did everything they could. Frederick was booked into jail with no bond, and is also charged with assault with a deadly weapon for the attack on the man.
The details of the arrest warrant describe a chaotic and violent scene at the home. Frederick allegedly stabbed her son multiple times before turning her aggression toward the other individual on the property. She made her first court appearance recently and is scheduled to return to court in mid-April. This horrific event has shocked the small rural community of Barnardsville. Investigators are still working to understand the circumstances that led to such a violent outburst against a defenseless infant. As the legal process begins, the focus remains on the tragic loss of young Enoch and the impact this will have on everyone involved in this deeply disturbing case.
That wraps up our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us for these important updates. Be sure to follow the show for your next daily briefing on the stories that matter most.